The Art of Leadership Network.
Hey leaders, welcome to the LeadCulture Podcast. We're a part of the Art of Leadership Network. I'm your host, Jenni Catron, CEO of the Foresight Group. We're a company dedicated to helping leaders develop thriving teams. Each week, I'll be your guide as we explore practical strategies to equip you with the tools you need to lead with clarity, confidence, and build unstoppable momentum in your organization. Now, my mission is to be your trusted coach, empowering you to master the art of self-leadership so you'll learn to lead yourself well so you can lead others better. Each week, we take a deep dive on a leadership or a culture topic. You'll hear stories from amazing guests and leaders like you who are committed to leading well. So let's dive in and keep learning on this leadership journey together. Friends, today we're talking about the define phase of our LeadCulture framework. Because before you can build or protect your culture, you kind of have to know what it is. If you've ever felt like your team isn't quite firing on all cylinders, maybe people are leaving, communication is breaking down, or maybe just decisions are taking too long, you're not alone. In fact, Gallup's latest State of the Workplace report shows that only 31% of U.S. workers are engaged in their work. That means that potentially 69% of us are not engaged. And that's not just sad, it's expensive. It means lower productivity, higher turnover, and a massive drain of your organization's momentum. That's why the define phase is so important to get right. It's why we've built the LeadCulture framework in helping us know how to build a culture where employees thrive. It's where everything becomes clear for you and everyone on your team. So in this phase, we define the values, the beliefs, and the behaviors that matter most and help you make sure they stick in your organization. So they become more than just value statements on a wall somewhere. They really become how your team operates. So my guest today knows this firsthand. Angela walked through a season where her team was experiencing burnout, turnover, and kind of that quiet undercurrent of negativity leaders can feel even before we can name it. Like we can just kind of sense it. She knew that something had to change. And today she's going to share exactly how she defined their staff values and how that process started solving real organizational problems. Several months ago, Angela reached out to me via email, sharing how her team had created some staff values and the results that they were seeing. And you guys, I was so blown away. Like, I love when I get these emails from those of you that are actively living this out in your day-to-day. And so my team and I wanted to dig deeper to understand what organizational challenges was Angela trying to solve. How did she get buy-in? And how did they scale it across their team? So Angela, this is so fun. I'm so glad you're here today. Welcome to the podcast. And I'd love for you to just introduce yourself, tell our listeners a little bit more about you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. I can't tell you, it's just an honor to be having this conversation with you. Your work is so profound, and I'm just really blessed to be a part of this podcast today. So thanks for inviting me.
For sure.
I have been married for 29 years to my husband, Tanner. So we're getting close to that 3-decade mark.
That's amazing.
And that also means we're in this weird new season of empty nesting. And so It's a time of just rediscovery. And it's been a challenge just because I miss my kids so much, but we've had a lot of joys in just being together. And so we have 3 kiddos. My oldest, Zachariah, lives in Florida. He lives, eats, breathes golf, the land of perpetual golf.
Yes.
My middle child is Elijah, and he just graduated college and started his career in Kansas City as a mechanical engineer. And then my baby, Eliana, is a junior in college, and she's pursuing physical therapy. So
awesome.
That's my busy kiddos, busy life. And if you think that the mom thing stops when they leave the house, it really doesn't.
In fact, I've heard people say in some ways it's harder and better. Like it's just a whole different season, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, so my career started in education. I started as a second grade teacher in Tennessee and loved every day, felt like I didn't work a day in my life when I was teaching second grade. I think it's the perfect age. And I also did some middle school, some work in early childhood, and then eventually became the leader of that early childhood program there in Tennessee.
Awesome.
That led to 2013 when we moved to St. Louis. I accepted a job to become the administrator of a 4-campus early childhood program. And we also have elementary school and middle school as well, but the early childhood program is what I oversee. So I have a staff of 70 ladies that serve every day infants through pre-kindergarten students, about 300 of them.
That's no small feat.
No, none of it. There's a lot of tiny feet in our world, but that's no small feet.
That's right.
So, but we're part of, a bigger organization as well, as we serve infants through 8th grade. So we have, administrators for elementary and middle school as well. So all totaled about 150 employees here at our organization.
That's amazing. Yeah, which just gives everybody context for your world and what you do. So I'd love for you to go into what you did, and maybe give us a little bit of the backstory, telling us about that moment when you realized that maybe the culture's not so great, and what was happening in the organization at that time. Was it turnover, burnout, parent concerns? So, give us the context of what kind of triggered you digging into culture work.
Yeah. So we kind of had the battle wounds of COVID that every organization really did. And,
sure,
definitely there was burnout. We were trying to educate little ones during a pandemic, and that, stress led to people leaving, making the decision to not be teachers. And so you had people leaving, and then that put burden on the team. And then the team started to get burnt out. So then that person would leave. And then it was very cyclical, to the point where you got to the end of the pandemic and you found yourself just kind of reeling. And all of that, really just was breeding distrust, a decline in morale. There were negativity. You could just tell that there was something brewing below the surface. So that's when I started getting really intentional about looking at culture. Discovered your Culture Works framework. Had heard about that on your podcast, and wanted to really kind of deep dive into what I could actively be doing to improve it and help it.
Yeah, gosh, and I love that. So, ironically, post-COVID, there was another preschool that we worked with here kind of in the region where I live. And that was it was intense for every organization, but particularly in education and for preschool, because parents still needed to bring their kids somewhere, but they're so fearful. The pressure on your teachers in navigating all their, and again, every company had their version of this, but I particularly saw this in a lot of preschool settings where you guys were trying so hard to help parents have an outlet for their children, and you're just navigating so many things. So it does not surprise me. But what is inspiring to me, Angela, is I'm suspecting you're exhausted too, because as the administrator, you're shouldering so much responsibility with the high turnover and, trying to keep morale up and all of these things. And yet you're still going, okay, what else can I do? It's just a testament to the type of leader that you are, that even though you probably wanted to throw in the towel some days, you were just committed to figuring out how do you lead your team to a healthier place. And I just admire and respect that. So thank you for your faithfulness in leading through that. And you said you guys had a pretty significant turnover during that time, right?
Yeah, we did.
A quarter of your team, is that right?
Yeah. So if you kind of walk through the pandemic and then get into that 21 school year, 21-22 school year, it was, there was a significant turnover. And there were people just making the decision to not work.
Sure.
And some of them were just, I just need to walk away from it. Some of it was that pressure, like you talked about, but here we are providing care and education for first responders and, critical workers. And I'm thinking, these kids are coming anyways, and I'm responsible for having a team here and ready to receive these children and do it with excellence. And all of that together was, it produced a lot of stress. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and even hearing you talk about that, it was like you could see the big picture in spite of the immediate circumstances you're probably navigating, like that big picture perspective of it. But wait, here's why we're doing this. Here's who we're doing this for, and the impact that it can have. So I just love that you had that bigger picture vision as a leader in front of you that really probably drove, a lot of the reasons why you kept fighting for the health of your team. Talk about so you were seeing kind of recurring tensions. Were there things that the distrust, the decline in morale, were you seeing consistent problems that you were having to solve beyond the hiring whack-a-mole I'm sure you were dealing with? But were there other things that like maybe behaviors or things that were happening within the team that had not been normal previous to that?
Yeah, absolutely. It really was something that I felt like it just started tarnishing, just the overall, the personality, the mood, like Goldilocks, things were not feeling just right. And, I felt like I was doing a lot of reacting. So I was reacting to the text. I was reacting to the email. I was spending so much time putting out fires or, trying to solve problems. And I thought, why am I so exhausted? It's because I spent my days reacting to whatever the loudest or biggest fire was at that time, rather than being able to be proactive, in the way that we were running the organization. And, then you've got communication was breaking down and you have this negativity brewing or, this person's not pulling their weight or, and all of that kind of starts developing this toxicity. And let's be honest, we can't grow an apple tree from an onion. Distrust is going to breed more distrust and negativity is going to grow more negativity. And so you really have to stop it at the source, at the root. And that's what I was really trying to do.
Yeah, that's so good. Gosh. You shared with us a story about Lake Victoria and kind of an aha you had about culture when you were on a trip. So tell us that story. Pull everybody into that story.
Yeah. And it's so relevant because I went to our sister school in Uganda back in March of 2020. So literally the world shut down while we were there.
Oh my gosh.
That's why it was so relevant and so fresh in my mind, when all of this was happening. But one of the great things that we get to do when we take a team over there is we go on this beautiful sunset cruise of Lake Victoria, which borders 4 countries. It's just so picturesque. And you see these very primitive boats and, you can just kind of go back in time almost. And it brings you to the headwaters of the Nile River. And so, we're on this great boat tour, kind of a rickety boat. And, we noticed, we were like, wait a minute, I think we might, we're definitely taking on water.
Oh gosh.
And so instantly that mood of this beautiful, serene moment started to turn into worry because I know what is down in the waters of Lake Victoria. And all I could think about was piranhas and hippos and, Nile crocodiles coming after me. So I knew if I fell in that water, I was going to do everything I could to scramble my way out of it. And so, it was interesting because I had this picture in my mind of it's so beautiful on the surface. And then what's down below is this murky water and these tree tangled roots and dangerous creatures. And so I thought that is such a picture of culture because I think what we have to realize is both of those can be existing at the same time, right? We can have beautiful along with the dissension. Great culture doesn't mean that you have this artificial land of serenity. That's heaven.
Right.
Right. And so, just thinking about, the culture of where we were, that undercurrent was really starting to pervade. And so we were starting to sense that more and more. So I wanted to get to the source of, what that undercurrent was. So that was kind of my picture of exactly what I wanted.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so good. Because I think that's what sometimes takes leaders by surprise is that they see what's on the surface, right? Like they see the horizon, they see the vision, they see all the things that they want to accomplish, and they're unaware of what's below the surface within the team. And one of the things I tell leaders all the time is that your culture isn't as good as you think it is. Because as leaders, we tend, right? Yeah, we tend to be mountaintop people. And so we're looking out at that great picturesque scene. And most of the staff are experiencing what's under the surface. They're experiencing all of those things that are just waiting to create havoc, or are starting to create havoc in our culture. So I love that analogy so much.
And I think it's, that's one of our first steps in humility as a leader, to recognize that disparity. That
so good.
My reality or my perception is probably very different than the people who work with me and who serve alongside me. So I have to humble myself and go, okay, what little pieces and parts do I need to be listening to of the murky waters they're in so that we can start working towards something better?
Gosh, Angela, that's so good. So wise, and why you're such a successful leader. So good. Okay. So you decide to dig in and begin to define your culture, and not just like a feel good exercise, like you're kind of conscious of, we need to do some good work, solve some real problems. So walk us how you used the framework to help you define the culture, define your values and behaviors, kind of catch us up to what you did next.
Yeah. So following that Culture Works program, that was so great that you guys developed. So I brought my campus managers in and my assistant director in, and I said, okay, it's time for us to tackle this. Let's get the train on the right track, and let's start, heading in a new direction. Tired of using the COVID word. Let's just, new track. Here we go. And so we started the process. They got the buy-in first from them, because I knew that they were going to kind of be my champions on each campus that would have to really continue this even on days when I might not be at that particular campus. So what we did is we brought literally at that time all 66 of our teachers together and our assistants, and we laid out a piece of paper that kind of had that framework on it saying, okay, guys, what do you value? What do you value about our organization? Why are you here? Why are you choosing to come every day? Like, what is it that you value? And so, at first it probably felt a little clunky for them. Like, what does she mean? What do you value? So we collected all of those sheets. And then what we did as campus managers, assistant directors, we took all of those, we put them onto a big document together. And we were so surprised because we started to see themes. Like people were using similar phrases and similar statements, and they were valuing the same things. And I went, oh my gosh, we are all working toward the same mission here, and we have no idea. We think that we're, working against each other in different places, but we are all wanting the same thing. So we kept doing that, the process that you outlined. And then we came back and what do you believe about those values? And then I think most people stop and they don't put actions to it. And so when we got to that point and we said, okay, so what does that mean? Our 4 core values are Christ-centered, people-focused, excellence-driven, future-directed. So what does it mean if you're future-directed? What does that mean in your classroom? What does that mean for you personally? And it was so, I think, eye-opening for all of us to realize that there was so much good happening. So thank you for that. I mean, it really did. It started laying out the evidence of all of the good stuff that we're already doing. And Tim Elmore has a book, The Art of Changing Culture. And he said, if you just have values and they're just on the wall, it's going to take you 10 to 15 years before your organization really embraces those values. But when you put actions to them, it's 3 years. And so I always use this landscaping analogy, like anytime you're, doing a new initiative or a new strategy or a new idea, the first year, it's just like landscaping. First year it sleeps. And then the second year it creeps. And then the third year it leaps. And so, that first year it feels slow and it feels like arduous. Like, is anybody along with me here? Is anyone else galvanizing with me? And then it started, to really gain momentum. And then we started to finally see, some of that full effect by year 3.
That's so good. And here's what I love. I love that you were aware of that and had the patience and the persistence as a leader to go, okay, this takes time. Like, because most leaders, even 3 years, feel they're impatient with. Yeah. But we have to give it the room and the space for it to, and the consistency for it to show up. And I love how you drew out, like the thing I love about the values grid and the framework that we build around that is it does. And this was one of those things that I was in your shoes in another organization going, the whole Culture Works framework the Culture Matters framework is built out of just, I'm in the thick of it trying to solve a problem that I have, right? Like I'm in your shoes going, how do I build a culture where people are engaged and thriving? And so that values thing, the unlock was the behaviors. What does it look like? Because then everybody on the team could get their head around it. The other thing that I love that you did is I love that you brought all the teachers in and they had voice in it, right? And then you found that consistency of those themes of values that were so similar. Everybody wanted the same thing. Like there was such a consistency in what they valued and what was important to them. And so that ability then to bring unity more quickly because they had an opportunity to speak into it. Then they saw that they all actually share so much in common. And then that you went to the level and the detail of not just a value, not just a belief of why that matters, but what does it look like in action? So good. Give us an example, where, feedback conversations are often skipped because they feel personal or uncomfortable. But when you anchor them and define values, you protect and reinforce them. And I think you have a good example around that I'd love for you to share.
Yeah, it really happened, I think, almost by accident. Because it was something, we were so deeply ingrained in these values and what they meant and just putting them at the forefront constantly every day, all day. And so there was an employee that was, pretty consistently late and everybody else saw it. Everybody else knew it. It started to breed some frustration. And then, okay, I'm covering for her. Why do I have to be on time? And she gets to be late. Just all of that tricky stuff that it starts to develop. And so we sat down to have a conversation about it. And I said, so one of our huge values here at our school is that we are people focused. And so when you are late and other people are having to step in and cover for you, and it starts to create a burden on the staff that doesn't feel very people focused. And so tell me a little bit about why are you struggling getting here on time? What can we do to resolve this? And it was like this aha moment where I realized that I'm not attacking the character or integrity of the person. I'm saying like, we're falling short of the core value and let's fix that. And so it diminishes a lot of that fear that goes into having that conversation, first of all, because the person's not going to feel like we're attacking them personally. But it also just continues to keep our eyes on why this behavior that's attached to the value isn't aligning right now. And so it kind of happened by default, but all of it was really prompted by our commitment to the core values. It wasn't prompted by somebody who was doing something wrong and I needed to address it and have them fix it immediately. It was prompted by something else. And I think when it's prompted and motivated through that genuine care and concern, not only for your people, but also the values of your organization, it has a totally different tone and effect.
Gosh, I love that so much, Angela, because you were just so intentional because you had established the values, you had defined those together, you were living into them and they were becoming part of the rhythm of your organization. That wasn't a surprise. Mm-hmm. So when you needed to coach a team member around a behavior that was inconsistent with the value, I assume she, because I think you have a lot of female staff.
But, yeah.
But she wasn't arguing or surprised by the value because she's already heard that. She knows this is who we are. This is how we work together. And so, and to your point, it was less personal. It was about us collectively being committed to these things that we value in our core to what we do and how we do it. So I love that as they become true to who we are, they become part of how we coach and give feedback and support our team in other ways. So I love that so much. And I think the other opportunity, and I'm sure you do this a lot, is looking for the positive reinforcement of when somebody's living a value, right? It's like, we can use them to coach and correct, and we can use them to highlight and celebrate when team members are really living into what we aspire to. Now, one of the things that I love about your story is you kind of took control for what you could influence. Like, you're responsible for schools, the locations that you lead. But then, like you said, there's a broader organization with the education through grade 8. And so your executive director saw what you were doing with your team and then wanted you to take it organization wide. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so tell me about getting buy-in and kind of expanding it then to the whole organization.
Yeah. So when I finally just presented that final product that we had as an early childhood program, he looked at it and he said, well, but these are our 4 core values. It's just, different facets of each of those values. And he's like, let's do this. Let's do this for the whole thing. Let's align the whole ministry, the whole mission. We know what our core values are, so let's do it. So we kind of did a really condensed version of the previous process that we had done. And we gave opportunities even for the early childhood staff to give their input again. Do you feel differently than you did 2 years ago when we did this? And so we let all, about 150 employees give their feedback to what do you value? What do you believe about that value? How do you demonstrate it? Where have you seen it demonstrated? Who has demonstrated it? Give us specifics. And that same thing happened again. So for us to create our culture at its core document, it was just all these phrases were, the same thing happened. We saw those same phrases being repeated. It didn't matter if you were an infant teacher or a 7th grader English teacher, we're saying similar phrases.
You saw that consistency.
Yeah. And so when people can also see their voice in our descriptions and in our documents, they feel heard, they feel noticed, they feel valued. And so all of it just was a really cohesive moment. And it launched at least 10 different things that are all now tied into our 4 core values.
Gosh, I love that. And because I think a lot of leaders are probably in a similar spot as you are, in that you're responsible for a area of the company or business or ministry. And so sometimes then you think, well, because I can't do this for the whole organization, maybe I shouldn't do anything at all. And what I love that you did is you led through the teams that you were responsible for, and you weren't leading out of alignment with the whole organization. But then what it did is it ended up influencing the entire organization, which is so powerful because they saw it at work within your teams, and then it kind of rippled out to the whole organization. And I also, again, we hit this earlier, but getting the input and, like you said, people knowing that we're hearing their voices and their input and how that impacted their buy-in of it. I think a lot of times we're tempted to just let the executive team define the values and build out the beliefs and the behaviors, when in actuality, we'll get greater ownership and greater buy-in from the whole staff when at least a segment of the staff are speaking into it. And I love that you had the entire employee population speak into it.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the places where we sometimes struggle as leaders is we come up with these great plans and these great initiatives, but how do we put teeth to it? How do we make sure that this is going to be something like, oh, that looks really pretty on our wall, or doesn't that look great for the board report? But it was the everyday practical application of it that has really transformed us. I mean, it's part of my interview process now. My questions are completely reframed. Our onboarding process walks deeply through the 4 core values. Before we have every administrative meeting, every leadership team meeting, my meeting with my executive director, check-ins, we start those meetings with core value citing. And so I'm hearing about things across all campuses, about all the great stuff that's happening, because sometimes we get in our little bubbles in our little office and, we don't know all the great stuff that's happening. Because of that, we instituted monthly check-ins. So all of my direct reports, all my lead teachers meet with me once a month individually for 30 minutes. And we start with core values. Where have you seen it? Who's doing it? Because then we've got peer recognition, which is really powerful. And so then it developed a shout out program. So we have, now we have digital ways that we can even shout people out, and then that person gets recognized in the weekly reports. And, so there's things like that, but it's also like intentional teaching. So, so one of the concepts in education is, when we're working with children, we're trying to teach them executive function skills. The time to do it is not during the moment of upset and dysregulation.
Right.
The time to do it is in that period of regulation. And so it's doing things like, taking my staff as we start a school year through the new book, Making Things Right at Work, and building, teamwork and trust and all of that, and teaching it to them at a time when they're not upset with somebody and they're not dealing with conflict and they're not dealing with a difficult parent. You teach it now. And so why is that? Because that's part of our core value. Not only are we future directed and we want to grow and experience, but we're people focused. And so we're not going to let small things become big things and, frogs to become elephants. So, so
I love it.
You'll see it splashed on social media. It's part of my letters to parents, like, hey, look at these teachers and the core values. So we've surveyed our parents. Are we doing what we say we do? Are we who we say we are? Are we Christ-centered? Have you experienced that? Where have you seen us being people-focused? Where have you seen us being excellence-driven? And so, really, when I say like every facet, it feels like it's just started to permeate everything. Because of intentionality.
Yeah. Gosh, Angela, oh my goodness. Like, you are the star pupil. Like you have lived this out in such an intentional way, and you're seeing the results. And that's the fun part for me, is that you've committed to the process of, one of the things we tell leaders all the time is that we have to build a system that supports the culture we aspire to. And we define our culture by the values that reflect the best of who we are. And what I love is you have literally integrated it into everything you do. Like, you're just letting it be the filter for everything you do, from all of your employee, connections to how you're talking to parents who are your customers. And it's just absolutely fascinating and so exciting to hear, because what you're sharing with us is why we built the framework. This is the thing that we wanted to help every leader do. And the define phase really gives you a proven way to clarify aspirational culture, align every person, process, and decision around a shared set of principles or values. It's not just theory. It really drives outcomes. It lowers turnover. Our decision making is faster. There's less drama. There's more trust. Like, all the things we hope to and aspire to. Doesn't mean everything is fixed. We're people, so we still have bumpy days. But I know that in your case, and in so many of the leaders that we've had the privilege of working with, when we commit to the work of defining that culture, defining those values, we really begin to see us live more intentionally into that culture that we aspire to.
Yeah.
And so that's what we love to do. We love to help coach and provide tools and resources, just like you utilized, to help leaders do this and kind of accelerate the work that you're doing. So, Angela, I'd love as we wrap this up, for leaders who are listening who might feel that gap between what they hope for in their culture, maybe they're, rewind 4 or 5 years to where you were a handful of years ago, and they're feeling, kind of some of those things under the water that you were feeling. And so they have hope, but they are struggling with what's actually happening. What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, so there's a proverb, Proverbs 27, and it says, "Be sure that you know the condition of your flocks and give careful attention to your herds, for riches do not last forever, and a crown does not last through all generations. I think that as leaders, we are charged with knowing what's going on with our people and giving careful attention to the things that don't feel just right. And we can't hope for a great culture, hope's not strategy. We not only, how do we move from that place of, this is my aspirational culture to this is our experience, our inspirational culture. And that happens by just, it's in front of you every day. And it is, it's the grind of, dealing with what every organization deals with, what every school deals with. But,
that's right.
We ask the hard questions, we seek feedback, we, do what we can to improve when things are lagging and falling short. And we just all keep our sight, on that unified mission that we have to transform lives through Christ-centered education. And we're going to do it, with those 4 core values, wrapping our relationships, the decisions we make, all of that. So I call it intentional intentionality.
I love it.
The adverb and the adjective. It's something that we just have to, as leaders, dive into and get to the bottom of it so that we can get back up on the surface and have more of those picturesque days.
So good, Angela. It's so good. And for those of you who are listening, we actually wrote a full case study on Angela's journey. So if you're curious and want to hear more about the work she did with her team, the challenges, the wins, the transformations, hear more of the big picture story. If you're ready to define your culture and solve your real business problems, head to getforesight.com and we can talk about what's next. We want to equip you with what's next. So you can check all of that out. We'll have links in the show notes. So Angela, thank you for being so open and honest and sharing your journey and story and reminding us that culture isn't just a nice to have. It's really the water we're all swimming in. And so I'd rather it wasn't infested with hippos and crocodiles, right? If you're leading, you're responsible for keeping the water clear, keeping the culture clear. So leaders, your culture is the heartbeat of your organization. It's what your team experiences every day. So step into clarity, alignment, and intentionality, and watch your team thrive and be unstoppable. We'll see you next time.